Horror movies can be anything, really. There's lots of monsters and folklore for adaptation. And then you can just make one up. But some movies go the extra mile. Some movies make their creatures out of everyday objects. Anything could come to kill you in a horror movie. Cola can, your couch, your TV set, the internet. I mean, that's the most likely one, to be honest. But let's check out 10 movies where the killer is really not something you'd expect. Number 10. When it comes to killer items, I'm pretty sure that no one thinks of a couch. But the makers of 2019's Killer Sofa thought differently. It begins with a man doing a blood ritual over a picture of a woman, and then a sacrifice. Later, the young woman from that photo is informed by the police that her obsessive ex-boyfriend is involved in that murder. Meanwhile, a trio is tasked with delivering a strange-looking recliner, and it's taken to Francesca. But Jack here touches the thing and he gets this spooky feeling that he can't shake, and she becomes a little too enamored with her new love seat. And I'm pointing this out right now that this is not a sofa, it's a recliner. I looked it up, and to be considered a sofa, you have to have multiple seats, and this is made for one, so it's a chair. So this movie is Killer Chair or Killer Recliner, which we haven't seen those since the days of Horace Pinker. It seems that Francesca has this weird effect on men that makes her very possessive of her and a touch violent, and has taken out a number of restraining orders in the past. Back at her place, one of her guy friends sends up the first victim of the angry furniture as it attacks him and then feeds on his soul. But as the devious lounger ramps up its jealous crusade of taking out anyone that could compete for its attentions of Francesca, can Jack figure out what he's dealing with and help out? And this one's from Australia and is the work of Bernie Rao. And even though he'd done a huge list of shorts before this, Killer Sofa was his first full-length feature. I guess the title wasn't always wrong, since it was originally going to be called My Lover, My Lazy Boy, but they were worried that they'd get sued, so they had to change the title. They batted around a couple of other ideas, like The Furnishing, before landing on Killer Sofa. They secured an American release, going straight to DVD, where it got some nice reviews, and I like it too. It's silly, but it also knows when to take itself seriously. Plus, they really knew how to shoot that chair and make it look intimidating, and it has a pretty out there ending. Number 9. Now we're headed to 2016, and let's look at another killer object with Carousel. We meet a young girl whose mom has to work, so she's stuck watching over her little brother for the day. She decides to take him to the local carnival, and he rides the carousel, and is rough on the unicorn that he's on. And we actually get a voiceover from it expressing how unhappy it is with being a kid's ride.
I hate my life.
It breaks loose and goes out on its own, encountering a clown who calls him a ride, which offends him, so he stabs him with his horn, killing him. It then becomes obsessed with finding the kid and getting revenge, murdering people along the way. But it's opposed by the carnival mascot, the guy with the giant prop head that I guess never takes it off. They all go to a party, and there's a bunch of people there, including a brother and sister combo that are meant to be European, but the guy is doing a German accent, and the girl is doing a French one.
Trying to save this terrible soiree.
We are trying very hard to be your friends.
And I guess the whole shtick with the kid is that he's just always eating and like putting slices of cheese between two pieces of pizza, which is like, enjoy not pooping for a while, kid. Soon enough, Duke arrives at the party and starts the violence, killing in a variety of ways. But things get a little weird when Duke gets a sex scene. But this one was from Steve Rudzinski, and he's done a number of really low-budget backyard-style horror flicks, and perhaps got the most attention for doing Amityville Christmas Vacation, which won the Fangoria Best Amityville-related movie from 2022. The director himself appears in the film as the pizza guy who becomes the sort of male lead, and is apparently made for a micro-budget, although there's a handful of cool practical gore effects, so it's not too cheap. And there's actually 3 of these, since 2021 gave us Carousel the second, and in 2023 we got Carousel 3. So I don't know, maybe a timeline is in order. But I actually really had fun with this one. It'll likely depend on if you enjoy the sense of humor it's bringing, but it had a good mix of silly for me. Number 8. This next one goes slightly further back to 2015, and we're seeing something else inexplicably come to life with Killer Pinata. It begins with a man going into a shop looking for a pinata and sees one that has a sign on it saying "Do not sell" with a C. But that's the one that he really wants, so he bribes the guy and then brings it home. At the kid's party, the donkey sees one of its kind destroyed for fun, which clearly has an effect. And meanwhile, back at the old shop, the old woman who owns it is completely horrified to find out that the pinata is missing. She goes on the hunt for it, making a commotion as she does. Meanwhile, that kid's older sister Lindsay is having a party and brings over a couple of friends to her house where they decide to do a little pinata smashing of their own. That makes our little guy quite mad, so he comes to life and goes on the hunt. He dispenses candy out of his butt, which turns out to be poisonous. And this is a little weird. In both this movie and in Carousel, the group of young folk at the party play a round of Never Have I Ever, which isn't that weird because it's a fairly common drinking game, but it's just odd that it showed up in 2 movies I watched right in a row. The pinata then exhibits some other abilities, such as climbing onto a victim's back and controlling them like a puppet, and Lindsay has to try to survive. The shopkeeper tells the evil thing's backstory in glorious animation, and it's a battle to the end to see who gets split open with their candy spilling out. This one was from Stephen Tramontana, and this appears to be his second film after doing something called Grindhouse in 2003. The budget that's listed on this on IMDb is a mere $5,000, and it's said to have been shot in 8 days, so it was a quick production, and it got enough attention for Tramontana to do a follow-up. In 2022, Bride of Killer Pinata was released and would have Lindsay return to fight not just 1, but 2 pinatas of doom. Number 7. Those last couple were a little more lowbrow and low budget, but what if we went a little higher up? And we've already had a couch, a pinata, and a carousel horse, so how about 1996's Killer Condom? This is set in New York, but everyone is speaking German, and this teacher has brought a schoolgirl to a seedy hotel to improve her grades, even though she's clearly not into it. He puts on a condom, but then is mysteriously killed, so we meet the police officer assigned to figure out what happened. And his name is Luigi Macaroni, which is one of the most amazing names of all time. And it seems that there are several women that are accused of severing their lover's penis in that same hotel. Luigi goes to the hotel to investigate and picks up a young gigolo named Billy and takes him up to have sex, revealing that Macaroni is of John Holmes' proportions. One of the condoms crawls out and jumps away, but then attacks and bites, chomping off his right testicle. Meanwhile, the raucous rubber continues its series of assaults, chowing down on 13 Johnsons the next night. No one believes Luigi when he tells him it's the work of a sentient love glove, so he has to go it alone. But things are complicated when Billy is blamed for things, but has fallen for Luigi. Oh, and he also has a jolted ex that gives him a hard time and reenacts Psycho. The condom is a toothy little fella, but when it's killed, they're able to take a look at it and find out that it has no internal organs, so it's not exactly eating dicks. Also, it appears to be man-made, but worse, there's more. Lots more. And clearly, this is a German film, and it's by Martin Walls, and this is his debut feature film. And most of the rest of his filmography is also in Germany, and much more restrained subject matter. It was based on a couple of comic books, one called Killer Condom, and the other called Down to the Bones, both of which appear to have been only released in Germany. It's noted for featuring a gay male lead at a time where that was very uncommon, but it's also been commented on how seriously it actually chooses to take its approach. They actually put character development and substance in their trashy condom monster movie. But it's also known for its connection to the Alien films, of all things. That's right, H.R. Giger did design work on this film and came up with the concept for the look of the jerky Johnny had. and also for the lab equipment and penile guillotine that also appears later in the film. I guess it was also his concept to have one of the creatures accidentally attack a woman's nose instead of Dangler, or if it weren't his idea, he did a sketch of it. It's actually pretty great, even if it's a little too long, but this is a fun watch. Number 6. Time to go back to the present, since this next one is very recent, from 2023, and we're continuing on the trend of just killer blank, insert silly item, with killer kites. This begins back in the 50s, and an old man encounters a devil wind of sorts. And then, in the modern times, Abby is informed that she has inherited this old crate. Inside of it, there's a kite, and based on its history, they figure that it's from World War II, and it's thought that it may have belonged to the Nazis. That night, though, her brother is killed by the kite. She's visited by a strange man that tells her not to look any further into the kite situation. It flies around town, killing people at random, and Abby suspects the kite has something to do with it. She teams up with her conspiracy-minded co-worker to figure out what's going on, and it seems like the symbol that's on the kite matches that on a pendant that Abby wears. Thankfully, they also know the universal fact that kites love bread, which is a very common fact, and go to the bread festival. And it turns out they're right. So now everyone knows that there's a killer kite out there, and it's not alone anymore, as it multiplies into a number of flying death machines. They theorize that if they kill the main kite, it will stop all of them, so they have to form a little team to try to go to bring them down from the sky, because they're kites. And clearly, this is also done for a shoestring budget, although according to IMDb, it's estimated at $500,000, and yeah, that's clearly not correct, since I'm guessing this isn't even $50K. It's by Paul Dale and Austin Frosch, and Dale would also direct a number of other backyard flicks, with his most recent one being Murderous, which features a number of the same cast members. As you could tell, it doesn't take itself seriously at all, and if you saw Birdemic and were like, well, this is clearly just a bunch of GIFs that they superimposed onto the image, it appears as if that technique is perfectly replicated here. And it's pretty fun, although it maybe tries a bit too hard at times, like some of the humor works and some of it doesn't, but all in all, I liked it, so it's perhaps worth a peek. Number 5. We're going to stay in the low-budget world, but we're going back further now, further than we've gone before on this list, since it's 1991's The Refrigerator, and it ruins my streak by not being called Killer Refrigerator. It begins with a couple having sex in an apartment, and afterwards, the woman goes to get something from the fridge, but instead, it gets a little something from her. We meet a guy named Steve, and he and his wife Eileen are moving, and they get an apartment in the city, and it's the place from the beginning. The neighborhood is in a rough part of town, but the place is a bit of a dump, and he starts a new job while Eileen tries to become an actress. She starts to notice right away that there's an issue with the fridge, and in the middle of a breakdown, it opens up and seems to call to her. Things continue to get tense between her and Steven as she starts having crazy dreams, but pretty soon it's preying on people that enter their home, chowing down on one of the workers. But the fridge isn't all of the problems, since there's marital issues with mom, and a weird sexual tension with the super. So this one was directed and co-written by Nicholas Jacobs, and it was his directorial debut. After this, he'd mainly do TV shows, and his final work seems to be back in 2004. This is another instance of IMDb stating a film's budget that I have a ton of doubt about. It listed at $5 million, and even though this certainly doesn't feel like a backyard effort, it still seems to be much lower than that. And in fact, Wikipedia states the budget at $500,000, which is 1 decimal point over, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 1 point further over still and was only $50K. It looks like this one was a process, since it took around 4 years to make, but never really got much of a release. It went straight to video, got a handful of so-so reviews, and then just faded away. And this one's a bit of a dud. It has some great moments, and I love the finale, but there's just way too much downtime in the middle where they deal with the other human stuff, where I'm mainly looking to see a fridge eating people. Number 4. I have a feeling that you thought I was going to put Attack of the Killer Tomatoes on here, but let's face it, everyone's seen that one and knows about it already. So how about a different food item with 2016's Attack of the Killer Donuts? It's set in a small town, and we have Johnny, and he looks around the same age as his mom.
Go show.
Tomorrow. You're almost a grown man.
Oh, lady, we have to have a discussion of the definition of almost sometime. Johnny has an uncle who has a lab in the basement where he's got some reagent that creates a rabid zombie rat. And when are people going to learn that if you create a secret formula and that secret formula glows green, that it's not going to lead to good results? John works at a little donut shop along with Michelle, but he's in love with Veronica, although it's clear that she's just using him. Luther stomps into the shop but gets into a fight with the owner, so some of the serum gets into the donut oil. They start handing out some of the crullers to customers, including Officer Ponyboy, and they start trouble immediately. They grow fangs in their holes, and holy crap, does that sound like something I should get demonetized for. And they also do a shower attack scene like in Psycho, and geez, with the double whammy of Never Have I Ever, and now 2 movies here with a Psycho shower spoof, this list is all about odd coincidences. To make matters worse, when people eat the evil donuts, they turn into zombie things that spew liquid out of their mouths and butts. Pretty soon it's a full-on attack on the town as our heroes try to survive the high-fat content creatures of rounded death. And this one is coming at us from Scott Wheeler. He's done a number of things with the Asylum, like one of the Transmorpher movies, and Avalanche Shark, although this wasn't done through them. His main gig seems to be as a visual effects artist, which is likely why the digital donuts here look pretty decent, even though the budget looks quite low. Those look nice, and this was pretty fun. It's lighthearted and cute and feels like a throwback, even if it runs a bit out of steam at one point and then has like a 10-minute epilogue. Number 3. Here's one that I've covered recently over on the 80s Project, and it's one of the more known killer object movies with 1983's The Lift, or Der Lift. The beginning of this one has a bunch of people staying late at a restaurant, being loud and obnoxious and keeping the kitchen staff after hours, and the guy says it's freaking 1 a.m., so I'm hoping something kills them. They get into the elevator, or the lift, and it's revealed that they almost died. Almost. Damn it. They call in a local technician called Felix to see what's going on, but he can't find anything wrong. But clearly there is, since the blind man that goes to use it doesn't realize that it's somehow opened up for him with no car available, so he falls to his death. But that's not all, because when the security guards go to investigate that, the damn thing straight up decapitates one of them. Felix continues on the case, teaming up with a tabloid journalist who's doing a story on the accidents that seem to be occurring. Checking things out, Felix spots the van of a company that's known for doing experimental robotic research and tries to uncover the answers as to why they're there, only to be shooed away. So then it's up to him and Mike to find out what's up, but also convincing his wife that they're not having an affair. That damn Vader doesn't care what they're doing though, as it's just looking to do something like this death stuff, like trying to lure in a little girl. And this is pretty great because it's an elevator, right? What can an elevator do? Well, a lot actually. And plus, how many people do you know that are afraid of elevators? Because I know more than a couple. It was directed by Dick Maas, who also wrote the script, and this was only his second feature after doing a dark comedy called Rigor Mortis in 1981. Later on, he'd do the underrated Amsterdamned, but would also do his own remake in 2001 with Down, an American redo of The Lift that starred Naomi Watts and Michael Ironside. People seem mixed on this one because it's not the silly thrill-a-minute that you'd expect from a silly killer elevator movie, but it's actually quite good with a nice character work and solid pacing. It's probably one of the best movies on this roster out of a list of movies that I've mostly enjoyed. Number 2. As we move forward here, I feel like the objects are becoming more improbable, and that'll be obvious with 2020's Slacks. This set things up by putting us in a cotton field that is a part of some sort of experiment, and it's shipped out. It then shifts to a retail clothing store with a bunch of colorful items throughout, sort of like the most organized Gap you've ever seen. They hire a new employee with Libby, and she's really excited about it. One of the other girls who works there steals one of the new pairs of jeans and puts them on, and they have an employee meeting. And yes, these are just as annoying as you see here. The employees are never as enthusiastic as this, though. But then she goes to the bathroom and the pants start to restrict on her until she's cut in half. They're dealing with a big new product launch and a visit from the company founder, as well as an appearance by a popular fashion blogger, so it's a hell of a busy day. But those jeans crawl around on their own, causing another employee to get impaled on a coat hook, and they're actually discovering the bodies, but in the name of commerce, they decide to cover it up and keep quiet. But the jeans start ramping things up by using its waistline and zipper like a mouth to chow down, and before long, it makes its presence known. But no one can escape because the store is locked down to keep the new collection a secret. But there's added wrinkles once it appears that the pants enjoy dancing to Bollywood music. And soon, only Libby, Shruti, and Dick manager Craig are left alive and have to figure out why the pants are alive, and why they're killing, and what their secret tie to India is. So this was directed by Elza Kephart, and her path through Hollywood had her on a number of big projects in various departments, and she worked on a couple of X-Men flicks, and The Smurfs too, but she also directed a zombie nurse comedy back in 2003. This was a Canadian flick that was made on a fairly low budget, but not too low, and did a run through various festivals before being distributed by Shudder. And I really enjoy this one. It's a nice mix of horror and comedy, and it's aware of what it is. But it's also not making fun of itself. I'd love it even more if I didn't think that the ending was like too anticlimactic. Number 1. We end this list in the only way we can, with 1977's Deathbed, The Bed That Eats. We have this old spooky house in the middle of nowhere, and it seems like there's some guy trapped behind a painting, and he says he's immortal. A young couple breaks into the house, and they find this big comfy looking bed there and proceed to make out, but items on the bed are drawn into it and dissolved, including an apple, a bottle, and eventually the couple. It seems that the bed's been around for a long time, as told to us by the Daily Bugle. So is this in the MCU? Is Spidey gonna take on the Deathbed? The first segment was called Breakfast, and now the movie moves on to what it says is lunch, as 3 women also find the house. But there's something about one of the ladies that freaks the bed out. But if you think that this is just going to be about a bed that eats people, which I wouldn't blame you because that's the damn title, it also uses a girl's necklace to cut into a girl's neck while eating her. Oh, and the eating is always represented by bubbles of foam on top of the bed, and then the person is plunged into an acidic liquid that melts them. It's not taking itself too seriously, since at one point the bed is absorbing some Pepto-Bismol, and this magazine about oral lesbian with big butts, bazooms, and cracks with an X. And in case you were wondering, it's shown that the bed is an equal opportunity eater, munching on kids and the disabled. But I guess its powers are vaster, since it ate Aubrey, the man behind the painting, but then restored him and put him behind the painting. And he tells us the bed's backstory as well, giving us the whole history of how it was created and why exactly it's uncomfortable around that woman. And this one's nuts, y'all. It was by a guy named George Barry, and he both wrote and directed it, and it's the only film that he did at all. He never worked on anything else. It was made on a super low budget of $30,000 and was shot in the early part of the 70s and took 4 full years after they were done filming it to finish it and get it released. But when I say it was released, well, it wasn't. It never got an official distributor, but it was leaked out via a number of bootlegs where it would get passed around, first in England, but then in the US, gaining a reputation for being this insane flick. Barry wouldn't know this for ages, only discovering the film's underground success decades later, leading to an official release here in 2003. Lots of people have it listed as one of those so bad it's good movies, and was even discussed in a stand-up routine by Patton Oswalt. And I love this one. It's just so silly, and you're never really clear if you're meant to be laughing or not. Like it seems so serious, and then goofy stuff happens, and you're like, oh, this is bad. But then there's something that's an obvious gag, so it's impossible to figure out exactly what was intended as humor here, and that makes it a treasure. So there you have it, 10 movies about just random things coming to life and killing people. I kind of dig this genre. There's just so many like opportunities of things that you can do, and different methods for things to come to life, and I find it very strange when the things are something really as innocuous as like a pair of jeans. It's kind of fun. Let me know other ones of these that you'd like to see covered up in a follow-up to this. I have some other ones on the list I would like to do later on. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know which of these you've seen or would now like to see. Put that down below in the comments. If you like this video, give it the old thumbs up down below. If you enjoy the channel, subscribe, and also check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines, where you can help support this channel like these guys do. Appreciate that. And I will see you very shortly for another great video. Thanks a lot, guys, and bye-bye.